Pakistan's banks are open. Taxes are being collected. The IMF just approved another $1.3 billion. On paper, everything works. So why did senior judges just resign and protest? And why is the government suddenly restricting foreign journalists? This isn't a story about collapse. It's a story about a system quietly losing the ability to correct itself. Start with power. In late 2025, constitutional changes transferred major constitutional jurisdiction away from the Supreme Court to a new federal constitutional court, while also expanding the authority of the military leadership. The government argued these changes would improve governance and defense coordination. But critics, including senior judges who resigned, warned that they weakened judicial independence. And this reveals a deeper problem. A strong system does not depend on having perfect leaders. It depends on institutions powerful enough to restrain imperfect ones. Then comes the economy. Here, the story is more complicated. Pakistan has actually regained a degree of macroeconomic stability. In May 2026, the IMF approved roughly $1.3 billion in additional financing under two programs, while acknowledging stronger fiscal performance and improved external conditions. So saying that Pakistan's economy has simply collapsed would be inaccurate. But stabilization is not transformation. Pakistan has repeatedly become very good at surviving crises without removing the structures that create the next one. Look underneath the numbers. The World Bank says agriculture produces more than a fifth of Pakistan's GDP, yet remains largely undertaxed. At the same time, local governments now account for less than 5% of total government spending. And roughly 3.5 million Pakistanis enter the labor force every year. That's the contradiction. Islamabad manages crises. Provinces manage large budgets. But ordinary Pakistanis experience government locally. For citizens, the system isn't an IMF spreadsheet. It is whether the school has teachers, whether the hospital has medicine, whether electricity is affordable, whether police are trusted, and whether a young person can find a future. When those things stop working, public trust can collapse even when economic indicators improve. Then there is security. Militant violence remains a serious challenge. On August 2nd, a suspected TTP suicide bombing in Swat killed police officers and civilians. Pakistan's relationship with Afghanistan also remains strained over accusations of cross-border militancy, claims Kabul disputes. A government constantly managing emergencies has less political space and fewer resources for long-term reform. And then comes information. In August 2026, Pakistan imposed new movement and registration requirements on Pakistani staff working for foreign media organizations. Authorities have historically justified reporting restrictions, partly on security grounds. Critics argue that these controls encourage self-censorship and weaken independent reporting. But when scrutiny disappears, governments also lose one of the systems designed to expose their mistakes. So, has Pakistan's system collapsed? Not completely. The state can still stabilize its economy, collect revenue, and exercise significant power. The deeper crisis is that the system has become increasingly centralized, reactive, and dependent on crisis management. Pakistan's biggest problem may not be the absence of a state. It may be the absence of rules that everyone trusts equally. Pakistan does not need another reset. It needs institutions that can challenge power, a tax system that distributes sacrifice fairly, local governments that can actually deliver, and rules strong enough to survive whoever comes next.